comes back. My self-worth used to be because of things on the outside. Not anymore. My self-worth is because of things on the inside. I'm no better than anybody else in this world, but I am not less than anybody else in this world. It's an inside job. Being a child of God means I'm entitled to the best that God has to offer. Don't you want the best for your kids? Well, God wants the best for His kids. You know, there was a speaker out in California, and her name was Winnie Eddy. And she used to say, you probably do life like you serve cake. And I said, Winnie, what do you mean? And she said, well, she says, if you're a normal family situation, the mother makes the cake. She gives Daddy a great big piece. She gives all the kids an equal piece, and if there's any left, she has a piece of cake. And I said, and she said, well, you know, sometimes Mama don't get much cake. And I said, well, what do you mean? She says, well, what it means is you take the first piece of cake before you give out the rest of the cake. You take the first piece of cake. And she says, it's not being self-centered. It's called taking care of yourself first, and then equal things for everybody. But you take care of your own needs. You don't have to do it for anybody else. You know, see, I looked at Mother for years and years to give me what I needed. Dorothy had been giving it to me my whole life. My sister, you know, if you ever, you know, I wanted to feel special. And I kept looking to Mama to feel special. And Mama didn't have it. Now, when I was 6 years old, Dorothy got me a subscription to Donald Duck comic book. That may not mean anything to you, but as a little kid, you get mail once a month. And in the mailbox, when it would even come the week of when it was supposed to come, I would go out and check the mail and stand there just waiting with so much excitement because it had my name on it. It was my mail. She made me feel so special. My mother, like I say, my mother was a dressmaker and designer. People came from all over the United States. She used to make the costumes for Ringling Brothers, a bunch of the acts for them, you know. She was the kind, she was so gifted that she could look at a picture in a magazine, take your measurements, and make it. She made her own patterns, you know. I don't sew at all, you know, probably because I heard, shut up, leave me alone, you know. But the bottom line is I had a negative attitude about sewing. I just don't want to do the needle or anything. I crochet or knit. I do not sew with a needle. And as JD's Buttons would let you know, it's easier to buy a new one than sew a button on. Forget it. Not going there. And so we would have all this stuff going on. And here we are. And I've lost my train of thought. Where are we?
You're in Florida.
Thank you for sharing, Lois. I do good keeping score here. All right? Okay. Thank you. And to make me feel special, Dorothy, I wanted a store-bought formal for the prom. For my senior prom, I wanted a store-bought dress. Now, my mother made all these beautiful gowns and stuff, and believe it or not, Mother, who didn't care anything about me, gave me 18 years of music lessons, so I had all these recitals and all these beautiful gowns and stuff for the recitals. But I wanted a store-bought dress, so my sister took me down to the fanciest dress shop in Little Rock, and we looked in a book and ordered one from New York, 90 yards of red lace. I was like a Southern belle, but in this red lace. And I just loved, my hair was long and black, and it was great. It was great. Dorothy told me later that it broke Mama's heart because she had looked so forward to making that dress. But see, she never said anything. She never said anything about that because I wanted a store-bought dress. So Dorothy was the one there giving me these things all my life. All my life she was giving it. And the tragedy was for both of us, or all of us, I never looked at Dorothy and recognized that. I always saw Mama as lacking and always felt sorry for poor little Mary Pearl. We all lost out because of that. And it was only as I began to reconcile the things with my mother that I began to see that, you know, and I kept saying, God, where were you for me all those years? Where was the mother I needed? And then it was very obvious, well, if you'd have looked, Dorothy was your surrogate mother, taking care of all those things for you, and you just took them for granted. So you see, everything I always needed was in place. I just didn't look or give it credit. Because you get tunnel vision, and if you can't see it coming from where you're looking, you don't see it. That doesn't mean it's not there. So today, I'd like to say, JD tells me, he says, honey, he says, you're the best scorekeeper in the world, because it's like when we get into something, I'll say, okay, JD, this reminds me of back in 1967 when such and such and such was happening. And I was doing that to him one night, and you know what he said? Wrong husband. Overshot the runway, see? That was one of those things, and yeah, it was. I was giving him credit for something before JD. Before JD. And I said, well, we've just been married so long, it seems like forever. He says, you know, sometimes it does. When we're angry with one another, it seems like we've been married forever. And he says, but you know, when things are going good, he says, it just seems so comfortable and so wonderful, and I just thank God for every day. You know, and that's a neat thing. I learned from my mother's death. My mother she suffered from the disease of lack. She grew up not having. Remember, she didn't have enough food. She didn't have a place to live. She didn't have all those things. So my mother never threw anything away you might need it. She and Daddy got married. And then what happened? The Depression came along. All their money they had in the banks, gone. Just think of it, your entire life savings, gone. She never got over that. She never would put another penny in the bank in a checking account. All her money she would take and put it in her safety deposit box in cash. She would put there, never gaining a penny interest on it, ever. But she knew it was hers and nobody was ever going to take it away. She suffered from that disease of fear that she was never going to have. She was terrified that she would live longer than her ability to take care of herself. And what would happen to her then? I got tickled. One time I was at the beauty shop. My mother loved to martyr. Nobody loved to martyr more than Mama. And she would say she was she referred to herself as the poor little widow woman. And so she had all of these acres, and she would get out there, and for years she did the grass cutting, the lawn, and she would do the raking of all the leaves, and we had over 50 trees back there, and she would do all that, and then she got older and she couldn't, so JD took care of it, but she took credit for it. And people would say, oh, Miss Haynes, you know, how do you do all this? She says, I just work day and night, day and night. Never saying JD's helping or anything, you know. And Dorothy and I, for years, had been supplementing her income for her by going to the grocery store, buying a bunch of groceries, bringing it in, letting her retain her pride by taking care of her utilities and things like that, but we were supplying all of the extras. And so I'm at the beauty shop one day, and this lady is talking about her poor little dressmaker. She has these 2 no-count daughters. And I'm going, hello. That sounds familiar. And so she went on, and I said, would your dressmaker happen to be Pearl Haynes? And she said, yes, do you know her? I said, yeah, I'm one of those no-count daughters you're talking about. She goes, oh. Got very quiet in the beauty shop that day. I called my sister and said, you're not going to believe this. You know, and I told her, and so we both attacked Mother. We went over there. How could you say that? And Mama just went, But you know, my mama's mind went. She went. And I like to say, she had hardening of the arteries to her brain. And she began to think that we were stealing from her. We were trying to murder her. You know, her thinking process got a little warped there. And when she died, like I say, it took Dorothy and me 4 months to go through all the Mother's stuff. Because she hid stuff. You know, it's like in the toes of all of her shoes, in their boxes, in the closet, were fishing lures and fishing tackle. And then she would swear that we had stolen her fishing tackle. And evidently, some point during the night, she must have got up, hid that, woke up, forgot that she had done it, you know, and so therefore it wasn't there when she'd go look for it, and so she'd think somebody took it. Occasionally, she would find something, she'd say, I seen you brought it back. But what I learned in my mother's hoarding is that she saved even rubber bands. She saved all the little butter dishes, all of the milk cartons, all the milk jugs, all of the glass jars that pickles and olives and anything comes in. And the garage had shelves that went along the walls. And I filled 2 recycling bins with glass. 2 recycling bins, the whole things, just load after load. She had 3-bedroom home, and then she had all this extra in the big living room, big dining room. It was a great big old home. And she had bolts of material, just that. I took material to every senior citizen's home for making quilts and stuff. I gave stuff away, just give it, and all these clothes that Mother would make. And when she no longer had people that she was sewing for, she would just make up material and make clothes and make clothes and make clothes. That's all she knew how to do. And so I would take them to the shelters and the what have you. And I thought, my God, we'll never get through all of this. All of this, my God, it's just a disaster over here. And what I learned is that you can have too much of a good thing. So my thing now, the way I live is something comes in, something goes out. Because I only have so much room, And so I believe in pass it on to others, giving. And so I have all this stuff, and I've been given some really great gifts over the years. And I like to share those with people. And so people come to my house and say, gee, I really like so-and-so. Well, take it. Take it, because there'll be something else because I see that's that spiritual thing. Anything goes out, something comes back. So and my mother would say to me when she'd see me giving something away, she said, well, what if you need it again? I said, if I need it again, God will bring it back again. Because God is the one that supplies my needs. And I've learned that I've been given far more than I ever deserved in my life. That's the reason I'm glad that life ain't fair. We don't need fair. We need mercy, people. We don't need to keep score. We've been given far more than we'll ever deserve. Tradition 9, a family or relationship should be pliable in its organization, but our group conscience may appoint certain persons responsible to serve various functions. Now, this is just the normal day-to-day living in a house with someone else, being there around somebody. Now, JD and I came up with what we call the guidelines for acceptable conduct in our relationship. When you get married, I think it wouldn't hurt to have something like this, an idea because you got an idea in your head of what you're expecting from the other person, but do you ever sit down and go over it with them? I never did, it's like when you overstep the boundary, you go, that was a boundary. Never saw it coming. Well, that's a boundary. Don't go over the boundary. And we have these ideas. And you got an idea of, well, this is what men do or this is what women do. Not necessarily in today's society when everybody's working, everybody's doing the same thing. There's some men who enjoy cooking. There's some women that enjoy mowing the grass. I ain't one of them, but anyway, there are some that do that. So what are the guidelines, And so first of all, we decided you got to have guidelines for living together. And those have to be what is acceptable or not acceptable in our home. And these are mutually agreed upon. It's not one person putting orders on the other one. This is something we both sat down, we talked about. Number 1. Now this is our list. Yours would probably be the same, could be different, doesn't matter. God is the head of our household. God is to have an active role in our home and the decisions made for the relationship. God's in charge. I'm not in charge. He's not in charge. God's in charge. And right now, that already means you're going to have more peace and less conflict because nobody is running it. God's doing it. The next one is no alcohol or drugs in our home. Now, some people say, well, we entertain a lot, and just because we don't drink alcohol doesn't mean our friend. That's fine. That doesn't bother me at all. We've had a lot of friends come over and say, we know y'all don't drink, but do you mind if we bring in a 6-pack? And we go, yeah, we do. In our home, we don't have alcohol or drugs. If you'd lived here and had as much problem with alcohol and what have you as we have, you wouldn't have that in here. So we don't have it. You can have it in your home all you want to. We don't mind. But we ask, out of respect, please do not bring that into our home. And if you do, you will be asked to leave with your whatever you brought. It's just that simple. Number 3, no infidelity. Both been there, done that, got a t-shirt, don't need it anymore. You know, you don't need to dilute your relationship with all this outside stuff. Focus on what you got. No expenditures over $100 without prior discussion and agreement. You see, the money issue was a big deal because, you know, I would feel like I'm working, I can spend as much money as I want to. And he'd go, well, I work. I said, yeah, your money pays the bills. So, you see what I mean? That didn't work too well. So now we sit down before we get into those big expenditures. And I know $100 is not a lot in this day and time, but it's enough that where it could crimp the other person or what we're doing. Don't want to create a hardship. We don't want to have a problem. And that doesn't mean you spend $99.99 16 times. You know, we know all those little shortcuts. Another one is no obligations or commitments for one another without prior agreement. In other words, oh, we have an organ donor. Okay, go for it. Don't make commitments or obligations for the other person. You know, JD would bring home some guys and say, Mary Pearl will cook supper. Well, he didn't ask Mary Pearl if she wanted to cook supper. You know, and that's inconsiderate. And then there's this thing of, well, my husband's a welder. He'll be glad to take care of that for you. My husband's a welder. He welds all day long. He didn't want to come home and weld. You know? So we don't make those kind of commitments for one another. Somebody would call and say, will y'all come over Saturday night? Sure, we'd be glad to. JD comes in, he's tired. He doesn't want to go anywhere Saturday night. But you got to go Saturday night. Why do I have to go Saturday night? Because I told him you'd be there. Well, you be there. I'm not going. What will I tell him? Tell him I didn't want to come. I can't tell him you didn't want to come. Why not? I don't know. I just can't. And you know, it's so simple. And my sponsor said to me, all you have to do is when somebody says, would y'all come over Saturday night, say, gee, I'd love to. Let me check and see what JD needs. Let me check with JD and get back to you. Oh, see, that's so simple. But I didn't know you could do something like that. Because when somebody asks you, you need to give them an answer, you know. And she said, well, give him an answer. Give it for you, but don't give it for him. It's just a matter of courtesy. Okay, we have another one. It's called personal privacy and quiet time. We both have our own individual space. You know, I'm not a good morning person. JD's a morning person. When we first got married, he wanted to get up every morning and talk about our plans for the day. He jump starts his heart with coffee. I don't drink coffee. I do not instantly awake. I'm a slow coming. You notice I'm doing better now than I was at first this morning. See, it just takes me a while to get going, you know. I just don't rev up on that. I don't jump start my heart with all that caffeine crap. And so, anyway, I told him, I said, if our marriage is going to last, you're going to have to leave me alone. When I'm asleep, leave me alone. I don't like being awoken before time to get up. And then I've got to go through my routine. I don't like to have to jump and function. I hate it. I just hate it. I do it occasionally, and I hate it when I have to do it. And so he goes to work. He gets up at 3 in the morning. He goes to work at 3:30. Now, Tuesday was our 37th wedding anniversary. And so when he woke up, he went over and he kissed me and he said, happy anniversary, little darling. And I said, because it's our anniversary, I'll let you live. And I went back to sleep. You know, he pushes the envelope occasionally, you know. But normally, or if I'm going out of town, he always kisses me goodbye when I'm going out of town. So we have that quiet time. He gets his quiet time in the morning. He goes to work. He exercises in the plant where he works. And then he makes his coffee, does his reading, prayer, and meditation, and then he goes to work. That's his special quiet time. I have mine in the mornings when I get up. It's just me and the dogs there. That's my special quiet time. And because of that, then we can be quality people to one another, you know, because we honor that. We have special date nights. And this is times like I'll tell the people I sponsor, on Tuesday night after 4:30, unless it's an emergency, don't call me until after 9 o'clock. Because JD's in bed by then. And it's where we have our undivided time to one another. You know, we can talk to one another if we want to go to dinner together, if we want to watch a TV. On Tuesday night here lately, we've been watching that Dancing with the Stars, you know. We found out we really enjoy that. We get over there on the new couch. Actually, JD wanted a love seat with recliners on both sides. So we get on our sides and the dogs are there with us, and so the whole family watches Dancing with the Stars. And we don't answer the telephone, or we don't do it, because that's our time. That's our time to be together, you know. And my sponsor said to me, she says, well, what if they call from the nursing home? And I said, well, if they call during Dancing with the Stars, they're going to have to be on their own, I guess. Or they'll have to call the attorney. Because I have the attorney that I work for is to make decisions for my sister when I can't be reached, because she knows what my thoughts and feelings are on these things. So she has my power of attorney. And so that's the way that works. We do use common courtesy in our home. If you come to our home, you'll hear us saying please and thank you and using courtesy. I think it's real important. Any autonomous action that either one of us takes is measured by its negative effect on the relationship as a whole. You can do anything you want to as long as it does not affect that relationship negatively. No dredging up of past relationships, marriages, or using the past as a weapon. You know, what really used to irritate me was when he'd say, well, you know, Patsy never said that. That was his first wife. Even my father-in-law one night when I kicked him out of my house said, Patsy Sue never did that. I said, she didn't have the balls. Don't you hate being compared to an ex? You know, you just don't like that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we don't use the past as a weapon. Don't beat each other with the past. The past has to be put in the past if you're going to have any today and tomorrow. You can't live on the past and today. You know, it's a thing that if you are standing on today and you are pissing and moaning about the past or worrying about your future, you are ruining today. And today is all you have. Think about it. You can't undo the past. You're going to have to put it and let it go. What in the world good do you get out of dredging up the past and beating somebody the hell out of it? What do you get out of that? What satisfaction do you get? You think you're being right? You're being stupid. Because you may be ruining the relationship of today. And those things affect us. Those things affect us terribly. You know, thank God I didn't have any children to be in that mess. But children hear you when you're talking. And if you're running down their mother or their father or whatever, their grandmother, grandfather, if you're running down these people, they hear that. I have a friend of mine she's been in al-anon a long, long time. And she said that when her husband was drinking, he'd come in, pass out, and she'd kick him. He'd lay on the floor and she'd kick him and she'd do a pirouette on him and this kind of thing. And she said later, years later, her little girl was about 3 at the time. And years later, she says, do you remember anything about the drinking? You know what the kid said? You hurt my daddy. You hurt my daddy. Remember, they love their parents. Don't make them make choices. Allow them to have the love for their dad. So what if their daddy's an alcoholic and their mother's a nut? They have a right to love their parents, you know. We try to use the rules for healthy communication as outlined in The Dilemma of the Alcoholic Marriage. I understand they've made that obsolete or something. It's one of the best pieces of literature Al-Anon ever had. If you don't have it, find it somewhere. And the rules are, discuss, don't attack one another. When you come at it with you, the word you are attacking. Because you're pointing, you did this, you didn't do that. That's an attack. Talk in a low voice. You see, I have a loud voice on a normal day. And if I am talking like this, you'll get the idea I may be upset. And then you're going to become defensive. So nothing is ever managed you're not communicating when you do that. So try to talk in a low voice. And you know, the amazing thing is with JD and his hearing loss, and if I talk loud, it blurs. So if I talk softly and low, he can understand better, you know. It's just hard when you're full of emotion to keep it soft and low. As he says, sometimes I get too soft and too low, and he knows it's deadly. Of course, he goes by the eyes, too, the little beady eyes. When I go into my al-anon stance with my blue hair and my little thin lips. Stick to the subject. Don't try to bring up everything you're pissed about at the same time. One at a time. Stick to the subject. Don't go back and drag up other stuff. Listen to the other person's complaints. Listen with an open mind. They might tell you something. And don't make demands. Don't issue those ultimatums, because don't say anything you're not going to follow through on. Because how many times have you said, if you do that one more time, and they do it, what happens? If you do that one more time, and they do it, what happens? If you do that one more, I see people do that with kids, and I'm thinking, jerk their hair out of their head right now. Don't wait. I don't ever remember my mother ever saying to me, if you do that one more time, Mama just did you. I mean, that was it. And you went, don't do that again. Okay. Don't try to work the other person's program or tell them how. It's their program. Either they work it or they don't. And if you're living with someone who doesn't have a program, remember, that doesn't mean you're not obligated to work yours. You may be the only picture of recovery that person ever sees. And the thing about it is, I kept telling my sponsor, how come my family do not want to be in this program? And she says, well, maybe you're not working yours consistently enough. You're changing your behavior and then you have a fit. Well, all they remember is the fit. You're just like you used to be because you was having fits. See, it takes a long time of consistent change before people go, you've changed. It's sort of like if you're real heavy and you lose weight. If you weigh 25, let's say you weigh 125 pounds, and you lose 5 pounds, everybody goes, my God, you're losing weight, all right? You weigh 225, you lose 5 pounds. Nobody notices anything. You got to lose a lot of weight. You lose 75 pounds, and somebody else says, are you on a diet? Look, asshole, I've been starving for months. God! See, these are the things my head say, and I'll go, yes. See, it doesn't matter what your head says, it's what your mouth says. You can think anything. Okay. After God, our personal recovery comes first before our partners. God comes first, and then my recovery. Because if I don't have my recovery, I'm not going to have a partner very long. I can't be worried about my partner stuff. I got to be sure and take care of me and my relationship with God. And then getting rid of the untouchables. Now, what are the untouchables? Those are those subjects that you try to sit down and talk about, and you always get your feelings hurt, or you always get in an argument over. Those things. Everybody has them. Those things that you just can't seem to talk about with somebody not getting aggravated or hurt or pissed off. And so the way we did this was, it was usually about his family or my family. I can say anything I want to about my family. He can say anything he wants to about his family, but God help us if we criticize the other's family, Because immediately you feel honor bound to defend them, Because no matter what they've done, they still are your brother, sister, mother, father, whatever. And so we could not discuss those things. And so finally one night, I told him, I said, JD, we've got to find a way to be able to talk and to share our feelings about stuff without getting into that crap on those untouchables. And I'm just as bad about it as you are. So we decided what we would do when one of those times came up, we would sit facing one another, pull our chairs up to where we were facing with our knees touching, and we would hold hands. And we would look at each other dead in the eye, and we would talk it through until we had it talked out. Instead of somebody getting mad, leaving. You know how you get in a snit and go, I can't talk to you, and walk on. You don't understand, that kind of stuff. We can't do that. And we were able over a period of time to be able to sit down and get those untouchables out of our life. So that today we can sit down and we can discuss anything and everything in our relationship. And if, it's like with the deal with his brother, I know when to keep my mouth shut, as far as, I could see that his brother, it didn't appear to me being the al-anon who's in charge of diagnosis and referrals, that his brother, it appeared to me that his brother was going only to keep his ass out of jail. And it's not really important why people go, it's why they stay. And I didn't see him staying, And J.D. wanted it so bad for him. And I just had to let him share his feelings and keep my mouth shut and not comment. Because he wasn't going to want to hear my comment. And it wasn't going to be anything that was going to help JD's feelings. So just keep your mouth shut. Just do a lot of, you may be right. I don't think so, but you may be right. You don't say I don't think so. Honesty and trust must be observed. You got to quit having secrets. You're only as sick as your secrets. Don't keep secrets from one another. Those are the things that separate you. If you have to keep it a secret. Have you ever done something and thought, I don't need to tell my sponsor this? You definitely need to tell your sponsor that. Because those are the things. If you're going to do something that you think you've got to hide from somebody, anybody, don't do it. Don't do it. Because good actions do not have to be hidden. Good actions don't. Another is we try to work as a team whenever possible. It's like out there on that water garden. We built that deal together. JD and I have done some remarkable things for people who could not be together in the same room very long without getting into an argument. We put together an entertainment center. Came in 5 boxes. I went, oh my God. And see, JD likes to take everything and throw it all around the room, and I like to read the directions. And so we found out that can work. He scatters it all around the room, and then I read the directions and find out what goes where. And then we put it together. It took us 2 days. We got put together. We couldn't stand it up. It was too heavy. That stuff they make things out of that's not wood, but it's pressed like wood or something? It's heavier than wood. We had to get a couple of neighbors come over. Would y'all please come over and help us lift our entertainment center? Because it's in the floor, and JD and I do not have the strength. Well, think about it. You're lifting 5 boxes, what was in 5 boxes, together at one time. I don't know how they expect you to do that. I guess they should issue a forklift with it. I don't know. We built a computer hutch, a big one. We do a lot of little things like that. And just like his birds, JD's now started, and he's using rocks in conjunction with the metal. He makes them out of stainless steel and rocks. And so he drills the holes in the rocks and puts the feathers in the rocks, sometimes use it as a body, sometimes as the head. He has fun. And so I go up to the quarry up in North Arkansas, and I'd have to find, it has to be special kinds of rocks that you can drill. Some rocks, if you start to drill them, they break on you. And so I get these sandstone rocks. And I go up there and I get them by the carload and bring them back. And then he looks at them and decides if they're bird quality or not. But that's the way I help him. That's my contribution, working together as a team. We've been on some funny 12-step calls as a team. One time, and it was around Christmas, and we get a telephone call from the central office, and they said, we've got a family we need y'all to go see about. And he said it was not too far from us. And so JD and I got in the car, and he said that he didn't know exactly the address, but he thought it was on this street from talking with the guy. And I said, well, that means the guy must be a little out of it if he can't give him quite the address. And so we're driving, and I said, I think I found it. And JD said, what do you mean? I said, the guy that's out there in the snow barefooted with no shirt. I bet you that's him. Isn't it funny how we know one another? We've had a lot of fun over the years, And then any joint decisions, we have to reach an agreement ahead of time before we change the house or the yard. That one came up as a result of the water garden. Because we both live there. And it needs to be something you go over instead of just doing something. And it's like, this summer, one of the gentlemen that I sponsor who lives in Toronto, he called and said, I want to paint your house. I want to paint several rooms inside your house for your birthday. I thought, neato. And I said, well, let me check with JD first. And JD says, painting, that's not. I said, no, I think you're going to be at work and we're going to be doing the painting and stuff. And I said, but it's going to be confusion to live in. The best thing is to move away from home when you're working in the house. But you can't always do that, And so the object was to get it painted without getting the paint everywhere. And I kept telling him, Rick, we're not replacing the carpet. Keep that in mind. We're not replacing the carpet. I want you to know he did all the living room, the L going into the kitchen, all of the kitchen and the hallway without one drop of paint on the carpet. He's the most putz I have ever seen. Bless his heart, he's a perfectionist and he does everything to perfection. And it was wonderful that he did it, but my house was screwed up for 3 weeks. I thought I'd die. And I told him, I said, next year, buy me a gift. But it is beautiful. He did beautiful work. But he agreed it was a lot more than what he had anticipated to start with. Sometimes, we get carried away with that. And then we made a list of all the jobs and things that we do for the things of the house. Just the day-to-day living. And I had the things that I like to do. JD had the things that he liked to do. And then what do you do with the other 90%? You take turns. That way nobody's locked into it for forever. You say, well, okay, I'll do this for a month, I'll do that. But you know what's happened over the years? These real strict lists of who does what. Whoever sees it needs to be done does it, and it's not a big deal because we're working for the greatest good for the relationship and the home. And we don't have to keep that score anymore, We've also learned that peace at any price is just way too expensive. Just way too expensive. It just kills your self-esteem and self-respect. That's where you give in on something and then you keep a resentment about it for a long time. It's just not worth it. And JD had to learn to trust me not to throw a fit when he told me the truth. And I had to trust him to tell me the truth. Because see, a lot of times I'd say I wanted to hear the truth as long as it wasn't something I didn't want to hear. JD used to be a pack rat. Like I say, I'm organized. I did a terrible thing to him one time. I got into his closet and cleaned it for him. And I threw away his dingo boots. They were ratty looking. Why is it guys like this really ratty, crappy something or other, An old shirt that's got 45,000 holes in it, a pair of shoes that look like they've been through the Boer Wars. Why is that? And so I put them in the trash, and JD was carrying out the trash. He saw his boots, and the next week was back in the closet. It was a challenge. So I waited a few weeks and then put them in the trash again. And JD's carrying it. And then finally I figured it out. And so I put them in the bottom of the kitchen trash, put all the other stuff on top, and asked him to carry them out. He'd never think I'd have him carry out his own boots. And then he missed his boots. And I said they went out in the trash. You would have thought that I had absolutely emasculated him the way he screamed. He said, how could you do such a thing? Those were my boots. And he went through this, and I talked to my sponsor, and she said, how could you do such a thing? Those were his boots. Those were none of your business. And I thought, oh my God. And so it just turns out that my husband has a size foot that I had to order those from the factory to get that new pair of boots, and I'll never do that again. I leave his closet alone. I put clothes in it when I iron them. Used to see, I'm in my closet, all the pants are together and all the blouses, if they're the whites are together, the blues, the greens, Like I say, I'm organized to the point it's nauseating. I just close my eyes and poke them in. And he's happy and I'm happy. Just live and let live. And the thing of it is, though, the longer we've been together, the more he becomes organized. He finds that he likes having stuff, knowing where things are, having a place for something and knowing that it's in its own place. Da-da. I can't picture operating any other way. That's why it was so hard for me during the painting, because everything, when you take 3 rooms of furniture and move it into the other 3 you're living in, that makes it a very small place to look. And then when you're putting it, I had to go out of town, and I went up to Canada while Rick, who lives in Canada, was at my house. And I came back home, and then I had to find all this stuff where they had put it and put it back where it goes. It was really difficult and nerve-wracking, and that's what I told him. I said, I can't do that anymore. I'm just too old for that. I find that the older I get, the harder it is to go with the flow like that. I do better when I'm in my own little world. Let's take about a 30-minute break, and then we'll finish up and let your buns come alive, and then I know you'll be glad to have me shut up. Thank you. Oh, you're still here. I was in hope. Oh, well. A relationship should avoid, this is tradition 10, a relationship should avoid heated controversy. No one wins in heated controversy. You both will lose, you're both going to get hurt, and when you do, so does the relationship. A lot of words come out you don't really mean when you get mad. You say things you don't mean, you make ultimatums you're not going to keep. And the thing about it with words is once they're out, you can't take them back. No matter what you do, that person has heard those, he's felt the hurt or whatever from that. And once the feeling, you say, well, you shouldn't feel that way. I always love that. You shouldn't feel that way. Well, guess what? I am. You don't unfeel, idiot. Once you've had the feeling, it's there. And now you got to deal with it. So you've got to learn that power-driven anger, resentment, closed-mindedness, revenge, violence, all of that can come as part of heated controversy. When I got married the first time, the minister said, never go to bed mad. I guess I'd never got to bed. I don't know about you, but I've been mad all my life. When things happen I don't like, it makes me mad. I don't know how to deal with anger. How do you deal with anger? How was it dealt with in my home? When my mother got mad, she beat the hell out of me. That's what Mama did when she got mad. So what do I do when I get angry? I say things and I become physical. It's monkey see, monkey do. And did you know I've also found out over the years that people who are physically abused have a tendency to physically abuse because that's what you do. That's what you've been taught to do, whether people mean to do it or not. It's monkey see, monkey do. Now, revenge was a way of life for me. I've seen it, done it all my life. And where did I learn it? Revenge is a learned thing. I didn't know that. I was doing a 4-step. I thought about this story. Daddy and I went fishing and hunting all the time. My daddy raised bird dogs and we trained them and sold them. And we would go fishing. We'd go down to that old river club and we were down there fishing and we would have a wonderful time and we'd sit out there and Daddy would answer all my questions. When I went to the 1st grade, I could read and write. I had a vocabulary of over 300 words I could write, spell, and knew the definition of. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, but the school teacher didn't think so. And if you're a school teacher, you know why. Because I was in that class and I was bored. And that boredom is the worst thing in the world for a kid like me. Because then you're a troublemaker. Because you can't sit down, you can't shut up. You've got to help these other kids that don't know. I was always wanting to help, But now my mother decided on this one particular fishing trip she'd rent it and she came with us. You see, Mama has rules about everything. And Mother's rules about fishing are... she gets to catch the first fish, the biggest fish, and the most fish. Other than that, you can fish. Well, I'm 5 years old. I caught the first fish. I've screwed up already. My mama looked at it. It's about this long. It's a little fish. And Mama said, it's not a keeper. So she ripped it off my hook and she threw it back. Well, you're 5 years old. That's your fish. My daddy always let me keep my fish. And so I just went in this screaming coma right there in the boat. And Daddy said, honey, come back here to the back end of the boat with me. And as I got close, he said, and we'll get her. Well, I didn't know what it meant, but intuitively I knew I was going to like it. And what it meant was that every time Mama would catch a fish, she'd swing around, Daddy would take her fish off, rebait her hook, and she'd start fishing, and Daddy'd hand me the fish. I'd put it over. Every fish the old heifer caught that day, I put it over, I loved it. She says, my fish isn't a keeper. My philosophy of fishing then and now, if it's got eyes and a tail, string it, for God's sake. It's a keeper, And so that hurt my feelings. And so I'm writing about this in my 4th step. I was writing about this as one of my most pleasant childhood memories. You see, what I learned that day is when somebody hurts you, you do it to them back as many times as you can. I mean, is that bad? See, this was one of those defects that I thought was one of my greatest assets. I had the ability to recall and get revenge. I just loved it. Slow, premeditated revenge is best. Because just think how long you can savor that, you know? Okay, fast forward. Remember JD who wanted the sports car? And I wanted the station wagon, and we bought the truck. Well, later, one day, going home from work, I saw the station wagon. It called to me off of the lot, Murphy, Murphy. Murp's my nickname, Murphy. And so I went over there, and I looked at the car, and I came home, and I told him, and he said, I don't want a damn bus. Okay. I came home from work the next day. I go past the lot, Murphy, Murphy. I drove over there. I got out. I put my hands on the fender. The salesman comes out and he said, would you like to drive it? No, I want to buy it right here, right now. I have the title. I will sign it over. And I drove home with the car. JD says, I told you. I said, it's not yours. It's for me. He said, what about the truck? I said, what truck? We don't have a truck anymore. So much for that. So then he found this MG midget that he liked, and so he bought it. Well, an MG midget. Do you see a body that is going to work in an MG midget? It's not a car I get in and out of. It's a car I put on and take off, for God's sake. Think of another 100 pounds. You know? And so I'm looking at that, and this is back in the days when we wore the bouffant hairdo. See, my hair came down to here, but I had it in this whoop-do right up here. And so when you'd get in the car, you know, your hair was in the back seat. There's not enough room. It's too low. And there's no way to get in and out of a car that's far down on the ground. You know, I got long legs here, you know, and I had a big body. And so it's like you've got to bend in like a pretzel, and there's no way to get in that car. The only way to get in that car is you turn sideways and just fall in. Once you get in, then you swing your legs around. You got plenty of room for your legs, but it's that getting in and out of that low center of gravity stuff. I just couldn't do it. Now, getting out is harder. I never got out of that car. I didn't get my feet hung in the steering wheel. I don't know how that happens. It just happens. I hated that damn car. But before I got that station wagon, we still had that pickup. Like I say, and JD's got his little old sports car over there. And I had this girlfriend who weighed a lot more than I did. It's in the wintertime. I was off on Fridays, and so I told him, I said, be sure and leave me the truck tomorrow, because Reba and I have to go and buy groceries. And he thought, wouldn't it be funny to see both of them in the little car, sort of like at the circus. So I get up the next morning, and there's the little car sitting out there, and I am so angry. He's trying to ruin my day. Well, by God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. He's not going to keep me from doing what I want to do. So I get out there, and I fell in like I normally do, and I got in there, and I'm driving down the road. Well, I get over, and she hears me coming through all those gears as I'm coming down the street, and she's standing on her front porch going, she says, it'll never work. I said, it will. I said, you got to think positive. You can do this. She said, I can't. I said, you can. I've always been a positive thinker. And so I explained to her how you just drop in and how you pull your feet around. And she says, I don't think, I said, you can do it. So she just fell in the car, sort of rocked. And then I got her turned around inside, got the door shut. I got in. Now it's wintertime. You got your coats and everything on too. You know, and so every time I shifted gears, she had a spiritual experience. Moving on down the road. Okay, we get up there to the shopping center where the grocery store is, you know. And now I've got to get out. Well, I fell out, got my feet hung in the steering wheel like I always did. I got and crawled out and got out. And I go around to her and open the door. I said, get out. She says, I don't think I can. I said, what do you mean you don't think you can? She said, I'm stuck. I said, what do you mean you're stuck? She says, there's vacuum or something. I'm stuck. And I said, you can get out. She says, I can't. I said, you can and you will. So I got one foot up on the car door, went over here, and I'm pulling. See, I'm just jerking on her. And she came dislodged, and when she did, she fell on top of me. We're rolling around out there in the parking lot. And there's a guy watching this, and he's going, Lord have mercy, call the fire department. Now I got to go whip his ass before I can go in the grocery store. I'm not happy here. Now we go in the grocery store and we buy groceries. Where I thought we would put them, I haven't a clue. Do you know in an MG Transit the trunk looks like a glove compartment? So now we have the groceries out of the sacks and we got it behind the seats and the floorboard all around us. Got all the way back in the car, got everything started down the road, and we broke the axle. Okay. So that night, JD comes in, he says, where's the little darling? It's in a ditch over on School Street. He said, what happened? And I was telling him, he goes, my God, it's got a 500-pound weight allowance. I said, who knew and who cared? You left it there, you have to deal with it. It's not my fault. If you'd have left me the truck like I asked, this wouldn't have happened. See, it's never my fault. So he goes over there, it's misting rain. He says, well, let me hook on to it and we'll drag it home. He was just sick. He had this piece of chain, he hooked it on, he's gonna say, now, okay, let me tell you now what you need to do. Don't floorboard it. There's nothing that irritates me more than somebody trying to tell me how to do something I know how to do and then treat me like I'm an idiot. Who in their right mind would floorboard something trying to drive, to pull another car? I mean, does that make any sense to you at all? And so I'm just sitting there looking at him. And he goes into all this stuff and all these instructions, and I just can't believe he's saying all this. And so, like I say, it's misting rain. The truck is going, the idle's going fast on it because the automatic choke is on the truck because it's cold. And I'm thinking, all I have to do is take my foot off the brake. There'll be enough power to pull that little old dinky thing out of the ditch. It's not a big deal. I took my foot off the brake. Boy, did it pull it out. I'm telling you, it slung that car out sideways. There's a lot more power on that big truck than you think about. And so anyway, ricocheted, broke the chain. He came up there and he just, he says, I told you not to floorboard it. And he called me everything but a white woman, I'm telling you. He hurt my feelings. He should never have done that. You know, I had this philosophy of life. You're going to carry the name, you might as well play the game. So he hooked this chain, which is now shorter than it was a while ago. He hooked that chain on the front end of that little old car. And this time, you know, I floorboarded it. I mean, he did. He'd go out. I mean, he ricocheted off of the sides of both roads. I mean, he just went flip, 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 broke that chain. I mean, it just almost turned him over. You'd be surprised when you go, you know, like a 60-mile-an-hour takeoff with the little car behind you. Broke the chain. And now he's up there and he is just shivering. He's quivering. He comes up to the window and I said, now! That's what happens when you floorboard it. Do you see the difference? Well, he's hysterical. He talks to me. He says, now look. He said, I'm going to hook that chain on. The chain is now 4 foot long. He said, if you stop real fast going home, I'm going to go up in the truck. I mean, it's going to sling me right up in the truck. There'll be nothing I can do about it. Please don't do that. Well, I don't know. Is it obvious to you? It is to me. I can't please this man. So I just don't stop. Yeah, there was a stop sign. There was a red light. I don't care. I just didn't stop. You just keep going. And he has to follow. He's on, you know. When we got home, he was hysterical. And he says, I'll never have you tow me again in the echoing corridor. He's just quivering, you know. And I thought, yeah, you will. And when you do, you'll wish you had never said these things to me. 3.5 years later, I have infinite patience. You know, if you wait long, every dog has her day. You know, you just wait. And so he called me. He's out at his mother. Remember I told you about that long drive into his mother's? He's out there and the fuel pump's gone out on his little car. Now I have that big station wagon. See, I've traded off that. Got that big station wagon now. It's got a 450 horsepower engine in it. Oh, I can't wait. And he calls me and he says, honey, the fuel pump's going out on my car. Would you come home over at Mama's and tow me home? Well, I JD. And I hung up the phone and I went, oh God, he's mine. Thank you, God. So I go to get him. Now the hardest part is keep your face straight when you're going in. You know, go into his mama's, made a loop, came back. He's hooked on. He still get that little short piece of chain. He was always going to get a bigger one, never did. So I'll get this. And the funny thing is, you look out the rearview mirror, I can't see the front end of the car. He's that close on the back. I can't see it. But I see his little windshield and his face. It's enough. And I towed him out of his mother's drive and down the street and onto the main highway, 80 miles an hour. Now, turn on that highway and man, I push her on. And you know, you could feel a little drag on the car and you could see smoke from his little tires. He's trying to put on the brakes. It ain't happening. The big mama's on the road. I am pulling him on down the road. I come up, there's 3 cars, pass them all. It's like, whoo! Just pass them, past 3 cars in one fell swoop, you know. I mean, his eyes are big as beer cans. He's going, he is hysterical. And I am just laughing maniacally the whole time. And I went that 19 miles in 17 minutes. We got to the house, he was crying. He said he was terrified. He said, I have never been anything like that. And I said, you will not criticize my towing ability. He said, no, never. Now we laugh. But do you see how much craze and the danger you're in? It didn't bother me I was putting anybody else on that road in danger. It didn't bother me that that chain could have broken any time and slung him off and it killed some people. That didn't bother me at all because I was getting revenge. I love the revenge. You know, it's amazing to me. It's amazing. You know, I didn't know. Don't take things so personally. But you know, when you're self-centered, you have a tendency to take everything personal. I remember the very first speaker meeting I ever went to. Our al-anon meeting was having a speaker that night. And my sponsor, who was the lady who was going to be my sponsor, her husband was going to speak. And he is a black man who's bald-headed. And so he's speaking and he's talking at some point in his talk about the fact that a fat woman sometimes will wear a tent dress thinking nobody knows she's fat under the tent. And I didn't know you couldn't talk back to the speaker. I mean, I've only been going a week. What do I know, you know? And I said, you mean like a bald-headed man wears a hat to try to keep everybody from knowing he hadn't got any hair? And he just laughed. You know, because see, when he said that, I was a fat woman, I took it personally. He was hurting my feelings. And so I found it necessary to have to respond to that. See, it's all about you, you know. I had to ask myself, can God's voice be heard over mine? See, I got this anger. And when I'm mad, I have a tendency to yell. Because I'm angry. I got all this power-driven anger. And so I would be yelling and he would say, why don't you just tell the neighborhood? Okay. So I go out in the middle of my backyard. Attention, neighborhood! J.D. Thompson is an SOB. Did everybody get that? And then I realized I'm the only one out there in the backyard. The neighbors are, JD's in the house. I'm not showing him anything. JD had been sober over 5 years, and my next door neighbor, John Henry's wife, said, "What are you doing that weird stuff?" It wasn't his behavior. That's like if you're at the grocery store, somebody has to nothing. When I carry those little pamphlets that say, does someone's drinking bother you? You want to hand them one. Because that's the way we act. We're crazy. We do this weird stuff, you know. And we don't care that we're out in public. Our world is so small, we don't care. You know, being a child growing up in that daily controversy with my mother, there was a lot of violence. There was verbal, physical violence in our home. And even knowing she was going to hurt me, I'd challenge her. I would challenge her, even knowing that, you know. The last encounter I had with my mother, like I say, she went nuts. And my mother was, like I say, always accusing me of stealing things and what have you. And one morning she called me and she said, "Come over, it's time for us to have a mother-daughter talk." I don't like the sounds of that. I called my sponsor. She wants to have a mother-daughter talk. Take God with you always. I'm going to Mother's. I need all the help I can get. So I go over there. Now remember, Mother and I have reconciled and all, and we had 4 or 5 years, and then Mama's mind began to go. And so that was a real grieving thing, to have a relationship and then now not to be able to do it again, you know. And so anyway, I go over there, and my mother says, "I want you to know I have contacted the prosecuting attorney, and I'm going to have you arrested. This is your last chance." "For what?" She said, "Those 2 rings your daddy gave me and my gold coin collection are missing, and I know you took them." I don't know what gold coin collection she's referring to. I have no idea what she's talking about, these rings. And I said, "Well, you know, Mom, it's going to be real difficult for me to bring something back that I never took. I don't know how to do that." And my mother was standing there at the kitchen table, and this is where she would cut stuff out that she was going to make. And she had her dressmaker shears in her hand. And she said, "I'm warning you, you better... I think I'll leave now." And as I got up to go, she's got the scissors now, and she's coming at me. And you know, that's real scary. And the kitchen door opens in, so it's at my back, and I'm going to have to go forward for it to open the door to get out on the back porch to get away. And it's like she became something I hadn't seen in years and years. And I got fearful, very fearful. And I reached out, and like I say, Mama being short, I reached out and I grabbed her and I pulled that arm down and I shook her and I said, "Mama, come to yourself. Mama." And she said, "See, you're trying to kill me." And when she said that, she backed up. When she backed up, I was able to get the door open and get out. And my mother, who had difficulty walking, chased me down the driveway. It's like she had superhuman power or something that day. And I got in the car and got away from there. And I knew I couldn't go around her anymore. It wasn't safe for me, but it wasn't safe for her either, because I knew if I had to hurt her to defend myself, I would. And I didn't want to have to do that. You see, I had lived in that all my life. I didn't want that anymore. And I went over and I told my sister. And my sister says, "That makes me so mad." And I said, "Well, you know, it didn't do me too good either." And I mean, I was pretty hysterical. Because, you know, it, like say, somebody trying to kill you, it gets to you. And so she went over to Mama's and I went home. And I was sitting there and I was just shaking and crying and shaking and crying. And one of the ladies in our home group called me just within a few minutes after getting home. And she said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I really can't talk about it right this minute." And within 10 minutes, she was at my house. And she was there and she held me while I cried and cried and cried. And then my sister came by and she said she had gone over to my mother's and she said, "Mama, give me the keys to the old trunk." And in the bedroom that Dorothy had used when she grew up there was an old steamer trunk. And she went to the bottom of that trunk, she said, just throwing stuff out. And in the bottom was a little box. And in there were 2 dime store rings and 2 little gold coins. This was what Mama was referring to. And she said, "Mama, look, is this what you are accusing Mary Pearl of stealing?" And she said, "Well, I guess it is." And she said, "Mama, you've done a terrible thing." And she says, "Well, there it is." And so she said, "Mama, you call and you tell Mary Pearl this is found and that you're sorry." So while my sister was there, my mother called, and here's what she said. "Dorothy told me to call you and tell you I'm sorry." I said, "Okay." And she said, "But what was I to think since you've been stealing all this other stuff?" The mind was gone. 2 weeks later, Mother had a major stroke. And it was downhill for her physically from then on. You know, that was a real extreme thing. But now, the things that are the little everyday things, those are the ones that get you the most, really. Do you know the difference between having a problem and an incident? I didn't know. I don't know how to make an incident. I don't know how to deal. I know how to blow it into disaster in my mind. Now I can handle it. I'm a crisis person, I deal in crisis. And so I was there in the house, and something went wrong with the television. They called the TV repairman over, and he pronounced it dead on arrival. He said, the picture tube's gone. And I told him, I said, oh, God, I don't need that problem right now. It's Christmas in a couple of weeks. I didn't plan on having to buy a new television, with Christmas coming up. He says, this is a problem. And I said, well, not for you. You're the TV man. And he said, well, I'd call this an incident. If it's not life-threatening, I don't call it a problem. I said, really? I said, are you in a 12-step program? He said, no. Why? I said, damn it. I said, I really like to hear stuff like that from 12-step people. I take it a lot better. He, of course, didn't have a clue what I was talking about, See, there are people out there that know how to live. Isn't that amazing, You don't have to be. It helps, but you don't have to be in a 12. And then I began to think, yes, there's a lot of things that happen in life that are just incidents, but we blow them out of proportion by thinking of them as a problem. So you ask yourself, is this a problem or is this an incident? Now, in 1992, my mother died in February of 1991. In 1992, I bought a new car, and I told my sister, she is always saying, you get to go everywhere, you get to see the whole world, and I don't get to do anything. And I called her and I said, get packed, we're going. She said, where are we going? I said, everywhere. I said, we're going to see all those things that you've been bitching about you hadn't seen. We're going to take a month and we're going to travel the United States. She said, are you serious? I said, I've never been more serious. Get ready. So I went in there, and in a month's time, we drove 10,000 miles. And we went from everywhere, We went up into Canada. We went all over the West. We did this, we did that. And we're driving along, and we're doing a lot of talking. You see, the mother that Dorothy knew was different from the mother that I knew. That 16 years between us made a big difference. And we were talking about some of the things that were similar, mother's discipline, that kind of thing. But Dorothy wouldn't challenge mother, so they got along pretty good. But Mama and I were too much alike, so that's one of our deals. But Dorothy told me, she said, Bobby hurt my feelings when I was 16 years old, and I'll never forgive him. I said, Dorothy, what do you mean you'll never forgive him? And she said, well, I had a crush on one of his friends, and he embarrassed me in front of him, and I'll just never forgive that as long as I live. Dorothy, Bobby's been dead since 1950. You think this is bothering him a hell of a lot? I don't care. I'm not going to forgive him till the day I die. I said, boy, now you can carry a grudge. I'll give you that. Well, when Dorothy died in my car, about 6 months later, I decided to check that out. And so I said, Dorothy, do you remember Bobby, our brother? And she said, yes, I remember Bobby. And I said, do you remember something that you were pissed off at him about for years and years? She said, no, what? I said, nothing. I said, you told me you wouldn't forget it to the day you died. You died, you forgot it. I'm not bringing it up. She said, I don't care. I said, good. But I was just testing that just to see. A lot of our problems in our relationships are because of poor communication. We don't say what we mean or mean what we say, or we don't say it. And what we say is not what we think we're saying sometimes. The way we say it sometimes, we don't realize how we are saying it. And when the other person says to us exactly what we said in the same tone of voice, it's surprising sometimes. Because, if I'm frustrated or if I'm tired, I have a lot less patience with things, and I have a tendency to say them with a lot more bleh than I do on a normal day. And when something is usually, and everything I do is wrong, it doesn't have anything to do with that. And I'm sure you've all heard about the alcoholic that came home from treatment, and his wife said, what do you want? He said, I want a fried egg and I want a boiled egg. And so they're sitting there, and she fixed them, and she put them on his plate, and he said, "Damn it!" She said, "What's the matter?" He said, "You fried the wrong egg." And it's just that simple sometimes, you know. It's just that simple. In other words, nothing's going to be right when you're not right. Things are not going to be right. And I want to tell you, too, that prayer about a situation doesn't always change the situation. But it will change your attitude about the situation. The situation doesn't have to change. It's your attitude. It's how you're looking at it, you know. That's what the thing is. And you've got to learn forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the biggest factors. Forgiveness, the willingness to forgive. You have lots of opportunities for growth. Tell me that. You know, it's like, do you learn from your experience? You have opportunities. I got a computer, my very first computer. Didn't know a thing about a computer. It was given to me. That was a gift from God too. In fact, the guy who gave it to me, his last name was Grace. So I always said, by God's grace, I had a computer. Unfortunately, he was the one that went insane and shot his wife and killed himself. But you never know, see. The thing about it is, I've known lots of people in this program over the years. I've seen a lot of people come and go. There was a guy in the A group from New York, and Ed and I had got off to a very rocky start because I didn't like his accent, for starters, since I don't have one. And he was always saying, "Back up in New York, up there in the jungle." You know, and I'm going, "Oh, shut up. I don't want to hear about the jungle up in New York. Can't you even say?" And he'd just keep on, and back up in Albany, and up in New York, and up in New York. Well, you know how they talk up there, Richard. He are one. Anyway. Finally one night I said, "Was it better up in..." "Oh yeah, it was a lot better." So well, go back. If it's so that offense. And so I had to make an amends for him, because the very next week, you know what this idiot from New York said? "God never puts on you more than you can stand, but you will." And I needed to hear that. And I was so mad at God for letting him say it. His name was Ed Jarvis. And God loved Ed. He was to go back out and to drink, and he was to die of his alcoholism. But Ed helped me. Ed helped me. So you never know on these people, you know. But anyway, going back to my computer, I got my computer, and they had a program on it called WordPerfect. It was the word processing program. And there was a girl in our group who worked for Systematics, the computer people, and she knew all about how to do WordPerfect, and so she taught me how to use WordPerfect. And I set up a file on my computer that whenever I'd come up with a question, I would call it my Terry Help file. And I would call Terry and I'd say, "Terry, help. Here's the thing. Here's what it's doing," or "Here's what I want it to do." And then she would tell me, and I would write it up, and I'd put it in that file so I didn't have to bother her again and again with the same question, you know, because she was helping me. And then one day I'm going through there, and I think I know now. I'm doing good, you know. I've been doing it about 6 months. I'm really getting good at this. I think I will look in my files and see what is that? Balloons. Why do I need balloons? Delete. You sure you want to delete? Yeah, delete. Okay, there's another little file. It's fish. I don't want fish. What do I need? Fish. Delete. And you know, if you delete enough, and all of a sudden, then you know, it just said, "Your program is no longer working." That was the end of it. And I called Terry and I said, "Something happened today." And I'm telling her, and she says, "Congratulations, you just did a lobotomy on your program. All those files are necessary for it to work." And I said, "Oh, well, I just knew that I never put them on there, and I just, And so she said, "Well, I'll come in with perfect for you." And I felt like an idiot, and then I thought, no, but see, now I'm learning. And zeros meant something. You know, I didn't know. I didn't know rim from ram from rum from rom. Who knew? You know, and it became more teachable. You know, and before I began to delete, I would call and say, "Okay, I'm standing at the threshold. Can I delete?" You know, those kind of things. I learned more by making that mistake about my computer than I ever had. And that's why I had to learn, and I had to forgive Mother all over again for being sick, for being mentally sick, and for going after me. And it was real funny because, see, once Mother was put in the nursing home, see, Mother, when she had her first stroke, it shut her communication system down. She could no longer talk. She couldn't read. She couldn't write. It affected that part of her brain. She wasn't paralyzed. She could move and walk and run around, do all this kind of thing, but she couldn't swallow, so she couldn't eat solid food, and they had to put her on a feeding tube, and so she had to go into the nursing home. And here's one more time, God went ahead and planned in love. One of the girls I sponsored, her son had had a car wreck, and he was pinned underneath the steering wheel by his throat, and it had cut the oxygen off to his brain. And when they got him to the hospital, they revived him, but he was a zombie for the next 2 years. He was non-rehabilitatable. And so she had to put him in a nursing home, so she had already researched all the nursing homes, and she knew where the best ones were. So I got the benefit of her search when it came for Mama, because we were going to have to take her from rehab to a nursing home, and I said, Dorothy, I know where we need to take her. And so we put her down there in the Golden Years Manor. Excellent care. And so anyway, she would be down there in the nursing home, and they told us to let her stay there for a day or two without coming to visit. Let her get acclimated. Well, Mother didn't like being at the nursing home. Nobody seems to want to go except me and JD. That's where we have my sister now, because she gets excellent care. She's in an assisted living section, and it's nice. It doesn't smell like a lot of them do. And they have activities, and they're doing stuff all the time, And JD and I both decided when one of us has to go, we're both going. We're going to help take care of one another and be down there and be done with it, because it's a nice place. Well, Mama didn't like it anyway, and because she didn't like being in the situation she was in. And so when we went down there, Mama, when we walked in her room, she pulled the door shut behind us. And I thought, not a good sign. I remembered the scissors. Not a good sign. And so all of a sudden she walks over to Dorothy and she just knocks her across the room. And Dorothy doesn't understand that because, see, her mother never did that. My mother did that all the time. Dorothy's standing in my place. Hello? And it made Dorothy mad, and she wouldn't go back for quite some time. And then all of a sudden, Mama, in front of Dorothy, comes over, and she puts her arms around, gives me a hug. I've become the good kid. And what I figured out was she knew that Dorothy was her guardian, that Dorothy had put her in the nursing home. And she was mad at Dorothy. And I didn't have anything to do with it, so I'm the good kid. I loved it. I'd go to see my mom. My mama would run over to me and she would hug me. She was more affectionate to me from that point on till she died than she had ever been in our